Imagine trying to explain the history of the light heavyweight division to a casual UFC fan. First question would probably be, oh, who's the champion? And I'd tell them, oh yeah, it's Carlos Ulberg. And they'd be like, oh, what champion did he beat to get the belt? And I'd say, oh, it's kind of complicated. He didn't beat a champion because Alex Pereira vacated the belts and moved up to heavyweight. And then they'd be like, oh, okay, how did he win the belt then? And I'd be like, oh, well, he tore his ACL in the first minute versus Yuri Prochazka, but then went on to knock him out because Yuri Prochazka was fighting weird and having mercy on his opponent. And then they'd be like, oh yeah, Yuri Prochazka, I know that name. He was a champion. Who did he lose his belt to? And then I'd be like, oh, well, that's also kind of complicated because he beat Glover Teixeira for the belt, who was a 43-year-old man and hadn't won the belt any time before that in his career. But then he got hurt, so he vacated the belt, so he technically never lost it. So then they might ask, oh, so who got the belt after Yuri Prochazka? And I would say, oh, actually, it was Jamal Hill who beat Glover Teixeira in an absolute beatdown. Then they'd say, oh, wow, Jamal Hill, that guy must be really good. Who did he lose the belt to? And then I'd have to explain how that's also complicated because Jamal Hill tore his ACL in a pickup basketball game, so he also never lost his belt in the cage. He vacated it because Yuri Prochazka had set that precedent. And they'd be like, wow, that's a lot of chaos for the division, but surely before that, in the older eras, it was more calm, right? And then I'd have to explain to them, no, actually, it was even more complicated because John Jones was the title holder, but he was constantly having to vacate his belt for steroids, court cases, all of the above. So we had a couple stints of Daniel Cormier being the champ. Then they'd be like, oh, well, who did Cormier lose a belt to? And I'm like, he kind of lost to John Jones, but then it was a DQ because John Jones tested positive for steroids. And then Cormier moved up to heavyweight, so he also never really lost the belts in the cage, I guess. And my casual friend would be like, wow, this whole division is such a headache, but surely Carlos Ulberg will buck this trend and he will be a stable champion and lose the belt in the cage, right? And that is when I have to break the news to him that because Carlos Ulberg tore his ACL, it is likely that he will also have to vacate the belt because the precedent has already been set by Yuri Prochazka and Jamal Hill. When you get hurt and you're out for an extended period of time, you got to give up the belt. So who knows what's going to be next? Then they'd ask, well, what is next? And I'd say, well, it looks like we might get Paulo Costa, who moved up from middleweight and only has one light heavyweight win, getting the next title shot at 205. And he might be fighting Khamzat Chimaev, who is the 185-pound champion. Or it might be Yuri Prochazka, who just lost for the belt, versus Magomed Ankalaev, who also just lost the belt. We have no idea where 205 is going. It is a very confusing division, and I feel bad if you have to explain that to a casual fan.